Why are more Americans being forced into poverty? Hey guys, what's going on? Hermdo back with you. As you can see, I'm in my new settings, my new surroundings. Just recently moved, but who cares about that? Let's get into this video I found. This is a CNBC video talking about how more Americans are being pushed into poverty. We're going to look at some highlights from it. Hope you're all having a good weekend. And let's just get right into it.
37.9 million. That's the number of Americans currently living in poverty, accounting for 11.6% of the total population. That's despite the fact that America ranks first as the richest nation.
It always kind of bewilders me how we have this huge GDP, how we have all this wealth flowing through this country. I think something like 1 in every 15 Americans is a millionaire. And it's absurd how much money we have in this country, and yet so many people are struggling right now. It's just one of those things. I know a lot of left-wingers bring it up. A lot of people even like right-wingers and even some libertarians bring it up. Just all people of all sorts of political stripes always bring this up. Just like, what's the deal with poverty in this country? Why are so many people struggling to keep a roof over their heads or just themselves fed and clothed? It's bizarre, really. I know there are other countries with like wealth disparity and whatnot, but in America, it's so pronounced. It's really bizarre.
In the world in terms of GDP.
The United States is known for having this great abundance, and at the same time, alongside that abundance, there is widespread poverty and economic insecurity.
Sometimes you question, we're in the United States of America. How can the citizens be going through such a issue? We always boast that we're a superpower, that we are the
now somewhere. Now poverty. Now they have in a couple of seconds they're going to talk about it, but they talk about poverty declining. It was actually between 2013 and 2019, it dropped from 49 million to 34 million, and then the pandemic happened. They're going to get into it right now.
Richest in the world, and things just don't make sense.
Poverty in the U.S. had been steadily improving over the past decade, from a height of 48.8 million people living in poverty in 2013 to 34 million in 2019. That was until the pandemic changed its course.
COVID absolutely had a very deep impact on the access to employment and long-term employment for a number of families that were already vulnerable for various reasons.
Prior, it was myself and my two older brothers, along with my stepdad, that constantly worked to provide for everyone in the house. COVID-19 and the whole lockdown, we were laid off, and ever since then, we have had issues finding a job.
Poverty is...
Yeah, that's the thing. That's, a lot of parents, or a lot of working people, rather, a lot of working parents, COVID really threw a wrench into these things, and we're still feeling the effects of it 5 years later, no doubt in my mind. With millennials, we lived through 9/11 when we were entering high school, and then, we graduated college into a recession, and we're in the prime of our lives, and we're in our 30s, trying to start families and whatnot when the pandemic hit, so it's just one of those things, millennials have seen this kind of stuff before. I'm a millennial. I lived through all this kind of crap, but, as far as like the numbers go, official numbers said the unemployment rate rose to 14.8% in April of 2020 before declining to 6.2% in February of 2021. Now they tell us it's just about 4%. But if you watch my last video, that's pretty much bullshit. I think the number of like underemployed people is like 23.4%. They count like homeless people with jobs in the numbers and whatnot. They don't really count. They don't factor in like the working poor. But yeah, the pandemic really messed things up for people. But there's some other talk of income inequality that I think was interesting here. Let's get into that.
Income inequality is one of the big reasons why the US suffers from such high rates of poverty. The income for the top 10% was more than 13 times higher than income at the bottom 10%, according to the US Census.
We, unfortunately, in the United States are at the very high end in terms of income inequality. And so what happens is when the distance gets further and further away, the rungs on the ladder get further away, and it's harder for people to climb those rungs out of poverty into the...
Yeah, I remember the essential workers thing. A lot of people, what was I working? I wound up getting my old job back at the start of the pandemic, and I was making a lot more money. I had been working at this small company making like $13 an hour. And then when I got my old job back, I was back to like $21 an hour. So in some ways, the pandemic worked a little bit better for me because I was able to make more money, you know, just getting back to the way things were. I remember my old company had lost a couple guys during the pandemic, and I was able to get back in. So that worked for me, but a lot of people got the short end of the stick. A lot of people got laid off. It was a big mess. I was put on furlough at my one company. And as I was on furlough, my old company called me back. But remember all that stuff about the essential workers, people like retail workers, and, you know, obviously like, you know, people, you know, in the medical field and whatnot, and all the stress and strain they were under, you know, with this mystery disease going around. Who knows how deadly it is? And those first few months were really, that freaked people out, man. It freaked me out too, because, you know, nothing like this. I mean, America dealt with it back in like 1918, the Spanish flu, but, you know, with this kind of stuff, this was like, you know, it hadn't happened in over a century. It hadn't happened in my lifetime. This global pandemic, it was wild, man. And it was really a crazy time, and people were really scared. And I remember just like, I don't know if anybody got any hazard pay working these essential jobs, you know. I mean, it was one of those things, you know, it was freaky, but let's get into this a little bit more.
The middle and to the upper class.
The pandemic has made inequality worse. The Gini Index, which measures the nation's income inequality, rose for the first time in a decade by 1.2% in 2021.
The reason the pandemic has made that worse is because when you talk to large organizations, corporations, what they thought was that staff was leaving, but they had a response to that, right? Their response was, let's give bonuses, let's give raises. Many organizations, many small businesses, government, they don't have that luxury. So inflation has kept up with the money that most people in the 1% have.
Yeah, they printed, how many trillions of dollars did they print? Like 2 trillion? Isn't like 75% of paper money, fiat currency in circulation, like printed in the last 5 years? It's insane, you know, that amount of money they printed. And of course, inflation's going to go up. And as we saw in that Politico article, you know, inflation's still really high, and wages definitely have not kept up. And that was the thing, you know, that was what the Biden administration touted, just how, oh, inflation's going down. And all these people were like, no, it hasn't. You know, it's getting worse than ever, you know, but, you know, and nowadays we see the effects of that. But there was something about European, they were talking about the way Europe kind of handles this as far as people with families go and are concerned. And I think this is something the United States should adopt among other, you know, European ideas. But this I found was interesting.
Most countries, for example, European countries, have what's known as a child allowance, where if you have a child, you get a certain amount of monthly income to help raise that child. That's pretty common, but in the United States, we don't have anything like that. And in the United States, we don't have universal benefits, for example, health care or child care.
It's also a system that many times is pervasive in actually creating poverty situations. So I'll give you an example. If I'm eligible for Medicaid today, and I'm also eligible for cash assistance, and I'm also eligible for SNAP, if I get a job that provides me even a little bit closer out of poverty, I lose all those benefits immediately.
Yeah, that's a big pain in the ass. I applied for food stamps a couple of years ago, and I made too much money for them. That's what they told me. I was pulling in almost $40K, and I was really struggling with my expenses. I had medical debt, I had credit card debt, I had all this stuff going on, and my money just really wasn't great. And that I went through a period where I was, they were cutting my hours pretty severely, and I'm just like, hey, I need some help here. And they were just kind of like, too bad. But that's why you hear the term, I don't really like the term, but like welfare queen, where you get a person on a bunch of assistance that they need to live, but if they get a job, they have an income, they lose it all. So they just like stay on the government assistance. So it just incentivizes, that shitty kind of, thing. I don't want to call it like shitty behavior, but it kind of sucks to be dependent on the government in that way. Maybe some people feel more shame about it than others, but it's kind of messed up that system's in place and we're not really fixing it. But let's get into this. There was another thing about supplemental poverty measures that I think was interesting.
On the official poverty measure.
But some experts argue that even the supplemental poverty measure isn't a perfect method.
While it looked to close the gap on certain indicators that the original poverty measure was not taking into consideration, it did not go far enough. Food is one of those places where we are still not taking into account what food may cost in a state like New York versus a state like Mississippi. So if you have a universal brush for the whole country, you're going to miss a number of people that are either at risk of falling into poverty or are already technically living in poverty but are not counted by the measure.
The Census Bureau told CNBC.
Let's see. Let's actually Google supplemental poverty measure definition. The supplemental poverty measure, SPM, is a measure of poverty that considers non-cash benefits and expenses. The Census Bureau publishes the SPM in addition to the official poverty measure. It compares a family's financial resources to poverty thresholds, includes cash and non-cash benefits like SNAP and housing subsidies, subtracts necessary expenses like taxes, child support, and medical costs. How does the SPM differ from the official poverty measure? The SPM includes a broader definition of need and family. The SPM considers non-cash benefits like SNAP and housing subsidies. So yeah, it's a little bit different way of measuring those kinds of things, but adding that extra money into the equation, can have mixed results, basically, and that's what they're talking about here.
That both the official poverty measure and the supplemental poverty measure provide a consistent data of poverty measurement, and that the Bureau continually strives to innovate and improve the design and measurement of their well-being statistics. This difficulty in measuring poverty has also led some experts to argue that poverty isn't as serious of an issue as it's made to believe.
Poverty in the United States, in the way it's normally understood, is not a big issue at all.
I see these things just kind of on the side here. These people living out of their cars, it's becoming more common. You see a lot of this kind of thing, people with families packed into like an SUV or a van and whatnot. And there's nothing glamorous about that. I talked to this guy that actually lived out of his car for a while. He was really struggling with some poverty and whatnot. And he basically said, like, you have to have everything you own has to have like 3 or 4 uses to like maximize space inside your vehicle. And he says, like, people take for granted like having a place to go to the bathroom, like indoor plumbing, or having the ability to take like a hot shower. Because I guess you could drive to a gym or something and take a shower in, but if you're on the road for like days and days and days, you don't know where you can go. It's the way this country is set up. A lot of people really don't have any places to go to take care of that kind of essential thing. It's pretty messed up. It's no way to live, really, unless you, not that I'm shaming anybody, of course, but, that's definitely not a way I'd want to live. Some days I just think to myself, I'd love to just get a van and outfit it with a mattress and like some tools and whatnot and go out on the road and drive around the country. But, just like realistically, I don't think that'd be very fun.
It's deliberately counted, okay? So the reality is that we have poverty in the United States because the Census Bureau ignores the entire welfare state when it goes to count poverty. You count poverty by saying, well, a household has an income, say, less than $26,000 a year, but all the welfare benefits, or 95% of the welfare benefits, are not counted. They also undercount earnings by about 50%. Therefore, you have a lot of poverty, basically because most of the resources that these folks have are not counted.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the way America measures this stuff is so outdated and messed up. It's ridiculous, really. But there's a segment in here talking about lifestyle creep, about how people making like six figures are struggling too because just the way their expenses are. And well, let's just get into it.
Errors in the game.
More than half of Americans with an income of $100,000 a year or higher say they're living paycheck to paycheck. This may be the result of a sneaky behavioral phenomenon called lifestyle creep.
Lifestyle creep is the common pattern of making a little more money and starting to spend a little bit more money. It happens almost automatically.
I think people hold these benchmarks in their mind. If I reach this position or I get this promotion or I make it to this age, then I can live this life, or then I deserve to have these things. And then they kind of go a little crazy or go a little wild on it. And then,
I had jobs before where I was making like really good money, at least for me anyway. And I wound up buying more expensive things. I would buy a more expensive car, or I'd buy a new computer, a new TV. And then you're just, all this money's going out, but you feel like I've made it in a sense. I've made it to this new tax bracket, this new level of income. And it was really, it's awesome in a way to have all this money and stuff. But if you don't watch it, you're going to get in trouble. Like me, for what I was spending money on, for the amount of money I was making, it really doesn't compare to I wasn't making anywhere close to six figures. But I hear stories a lot about these guys. They get these jobs out of college, like some big company, corporate executive kind of shit. And they're like, okay, I'm going to go buy $100,000 BMW. And those cars lose so much value. The depreciation on those cars is insane. The next 2 or 3, 4 years, that car is going to be worth half of what you bought it for. And same thing, they buy these big houses. They can't afford to furnish them. They live in like these $400,000, $500,000 McMansions. They have no furniture. They got nothing in there. It's just like a cavern. You hear this kind of stuff. I've talked about it before, but it's definitely one of those things. People don't want to live below their means. I guess I do now because kind of I'm forced to. But there's still stuff I'd like to buy. There's still stuff I like to spend my money on. But just right now, I absolutely can't right now. And a lot of Americans, even when those people making good money, they're struggling with this stuff too.
and it becomes like a trade-off. Like they only can enjoy their present happiness and they're not able to save or plan for the future.
There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things. The mental, emotional reason why we want to acquire more is generally rooted in this need for like your perceived value. Like we live in a world where like the nicer car you drive, the higher your perceived value is.
6 out of every 10 people surveyed said that paying for everyday expenses negatively impacted their mental health.
It does take a lot of joy from just life and always being in this scarcity mindset when there isn't necessarily a scarcity to fear.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, this is the thing, I don't know, is it like the result of living in like a capitalist culture, like a consumerist culture, where it's just like we put all this value on like material things and we care so much about status. You know, I'm at an age where I just don't give a shit. My car is 16 years old. I paid $1,000 for it. Right now I'm living in a small room. Most things I own fit inside this room. So it's just like, there's really no need for me for anything else right now. You know, I really don't care how I'm perceived. You know, that's just the thing. I mean, granted, you know, I've had this mindset for a while and I've been struggling for a couple of years. I mean, I'm doing okay now. I can't complain too much, but you know, I got a roof over my head. I got a job. I can't complain, but you know, in some ways it's just, I just don't care what people think, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just like my whatever image I project out in the world. Like, yeah, I care about some things like my friends and family. I care about opinions of some people, but like some random stranger on the street, I don't care if he thinks I'm cool looking. I don't care if he thinks my jacket looks cool. I don't care if he thinks, my car is cool. It just doesn't make a difference to me, but we care so much about how we're perceived. And I think that's part of kind of this like shitty American consumer culture. But there was one they talked about, just people trying to meet basic needs.
I generally like to think of lifestyle inflation in sort of two buckets. You have like your general idea of what lifestyle inflation is, which is the buying fancy cars, the buying nice things along those lines. And then there is lifestyle creep that's more like regular everyday things that if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're going without, like going to the dentist, getting oil changes on your car, right? There was a time in my life when oil change was just like not even a priority. Like I'm trying to keep tires on my car. I'm trying to keep it running. I'm trying to keep the registration paid. I'm not concerned about an oil change, right?
More than 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck as of September 2023.
Something with like cars, you see a lot of beater cars on the road. People just can't afford to maintain them. I know a lot of people that just don't drive because they just can't afford a vehicle right now. They're spending hundreds of dollars a month on like Uber because but owning a car, they just don't have, it's a bad cycle. You spend all your money on Uber. You can't afford to get a car. You can't afford a down payment for a car. Like, cause otherwise, the amount of money you're spending, I think I talked about this before. You spend like $500-600 a month just on Uber alone. And to get from point A to point B, get to work and back. And, all that money's going out of your pocket. You would be able to easily afford a decent car. You can get a decent car for $200 or $300 a month. But then you got like insurance costs, you got like maintenance costs, you got stuff like that. And so people just say, fuck it, I'm not even going to bother. But it's not good.
That, along with inflation, can have serious financial consequences. Many Americans also don't have emergency savings to fall back on. 63% of workers say they wouldn't be able to cover a $500 emergency expense.
There's that saying, being poor is really expensive, because then when it is time to get basic maintenance on your car, it ends up being way more expensive than you were planning on it being because you haven't done basic maintenance.
And that can go well beyond car trouble.
Yep, exactly.
46% of Americans said they have a balance on their credit card because of an emergency expense, according to a creditcards.com survey. 10% coming from car problems, 11% to cover unexpected medical bills, and 10% for home repairs.
Because of inflation and higher prices nearly across the board, people have been having a harder time making ends meet, and often that means turning to credit cards to fill in the gap.
Yeah, credit card debt. They have a thing about credit card debt here at, let me see, 24. Yeah, this right here. It's so easy to get into credit card debt. I remember I paid off one of my credit cards. It was like thousands of dollars, but I managed to pay it off because I got that check during the pandemic. And I was able to put a big chunk down on it. And I had some money saved. I just like put it all on the card. And then they raised my limit by like $4,000. And I'm just like, oh, cool, free money. I had that shitty mindset and I wound up getting in trouble. I wound up maxing that card out in a few years. And again, I did it again. I'm paying it off now. I'm doing a assistance thing where it's like I pay them, like it's costing me like $300 a month just to dig out from these credit cards. It's insane. And a lot of Americans just let that sit. They just default on it, or they just have like, you see stories of people like with like a dozen credit cards, they're all maxed out. They're like 80 grand in the hole. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And God knows how they're going to pay it back. But these numbers right here talking about Americans' credit card debt as a whole, it's insane. $1 trillion in credit card debt.
The U.S. economy has been on recession watch for months now. And so far, the all-important American consumer has been holding strong, keeping those recession forecasts from becoming true.
Consumer is still spending.
Consumer is in better shape. If they have money, they're going to spend it.
Consumers continuing to be resilient.
The consumer health has been resilient so far this year.
Consumer resilience is about to be tested. Americans now carry more than $1 trillion in credit card debt going into the holiday shopping season. The Federal Reserve...
That was the thing they talked about in Politico, where it's just like, you look at like the consumer confidence levels and how high they are, and people use that to judge the economy and how good things are doing. But it's just like, in a way, it's not a very accurate measure because people are struggling more than they realize. And, you know, it doesn't, like a lot of these other ways they used to measure, like I said before, these numbers are just inaccurate. The way they used to measure this stuff was like all these calculations and the algorithm and whatever. It was like devised 50 years ago, and it doesn't count in all these other factors. It's just not a good way to look at this.
Rate hikes have caused average interest rates for credit cards to spike to more than 22%.
22%, insane.
Credit cards are even higher, nearing 29% on average. Despite this, the holiday season shows no signs of a slowdown, as each shopper is prepared to spend almost $900 on average this year, according to an NRF survey.
The US consumers walking towards a cliff, basically.
The state of the consumer will be in focus in the post-holiday season, as economists will want to know, can American consumers handle racking up a record amount of credit card debt, and if it will lead into more delinquencies.
They just keep spending. They just keep spending. They put all these, I understand, like, you have a credit card and you have an unexpected expense, like your car breaks down, it costs $500 to fix, put it on the credit card, pay it off later. But a lot of people are just racking stuff up on there. They pay for meals, they pay for whatever, they buy TVs with that stuff. Just the debt keeps going up and up and up. And, you know, I've been there. I bought expensive things on credit cards before. I'm paying the price for it now, but, you know, it's a real nightmare. I can't imagine, you know, I had around 10 grand in credit card debt. I paid a few thousand of it off so far, but, you know, I can't imagine some of these people have even more than that, and they don't really have much to show for it. Maybe they have a couple things here and there, but, you know, some nice stuff, you know. I still got my computer I bought on a credit card. I've had it for like 8 years, but it's just, you know, it's showing its age, and I can't afford to buy a new one right now, but, you know, it's just one of the things, you got to hold on to this stuff longer. You got to just, that's the thing, you know, a lot of old stuff with your cars and with the stuff you own. Like a lot of the stuff on my computer, one of my monitors is like 9 years old. Everything I own is, you know, I bought some newer stuff for my computer over the last couple of years, but, you know, it's cheap stuff, or I buy it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and whatnot, you know, just, but, you know, that's what you got to do. And you got to hold on to your old stuff longer. You know, my TV's 8 years old. I got speakers that are like 10 years old, you know, it's just a thing, you know, you gotta just use it the best you can.
This is the first time credit card debt has topped $1 trillion in America. That amount includes both revolving balances and balances paid off at the end of the billing cycle.
Consumers are...
And they get that interest too. Like, you can spend, like, you max your credit card out to like $10,000, and you can spend, like, I spent like $9,000 just paying off interest on my credit card for like 3 years, and none of that money goes to the principal. That's how they get you with these insane interest rates. It's so predatory.
Increasingly reliant on credit cards to finance purchases of everyday goods and services, and that's because they're just getting a lot more expensive. At the same time, their wages are not increasing at the same pace as inflation, and that makes it more difficult because as the credit card balance increases, it can be more challenging for consumers to pay down that debt.
Yeah, it's bad, but I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching. This is absolutely insane. I didn't realize it was quite this bad in some regards. Some of these numbers were very surprising to me, but that's all I got for right now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Are you struggling with debt? Are you putting stuff on credit cards? You know, or I mean, are you living paycheck to paycheck? I know I pretty much am right now. But I've taken steps to make my situation a little bit cheaper, but you know, you can only do so much. You still got expenses to pay. You still got to buy food. You still got to buy stuff. You still got to pay your bills. My medical insurance premium went up $70 a month. So I got to deal with that, you know, but I'm saving money in other ways. I cut a lot of stuff out, you know. When you move, I moved twice in the last like year, and you really downsize and you realize I just don't need all this stuff. But, Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, you can share your money saving tips down below. But yep. I hope you have a good weekend. Hope the new work week is a good one for you. And I'm gonna leave it there. I will talk to you guys later.
Ryan Litzel.